Welcome to the Audit Room. These are real financial decisions from real people. We evaluate where they went wrong and provide helpful feedback and insights that we can all learn from. But today's video is a little bit different because I'm going to be auditing people from Reddit. It turns out the stories get even crazier when people don't have to show their face. A user on Reddit made a post asking, "What was your biggest money wasted / regretted purchase?" He goes on to say, "Sure, we all have some financial regrets, some mistakes, and some perhaps listening to a wrong advice, but what's the biggest purchase / money spent that you see as totally unnecessary right now and regret?" For me, it's a year into my first well-paying job. I was in my mid-20s, and I thought I deserved to treat myself to a car I always wanted. Mistake part was buying brand new. Went into the BMW dealership, and when I saw that beautiful E39 M5, all logic went out the window. Drove off with a car I paid over $105,000 for, only for it to be worth around $75,000 by the time I had my first oil change. Lesson learned though. Never since have I bought a brand new car. I'd rather buy CPO / under a year old and save a lot of money. Spending $5 on a new car, smell freshener, is definitely better financial decision than paying $30,000 for the smell. Now, as I've talked about on the channel before, auto loan debt actually kills so many people financially. It seems like every time an American gets their first decent paying job into their career, they have to instantly go out and max out their monthly expenses like, hey, I could afford $1,000 car payment, so I should just go buy that new BMW. It'd be awesome. Most of them do very little research and they make a complete impulse decision. Now they have a brand new car that's going to depreciate 30% in the first year that they own it, especially a BMW where they're known to not be reliable. Those high-end vehicles depreciate even faster than the standard Toyota. Just because you can theoretically afford to make those payments every month does not mean you can afford the car. Nobody wants to owe $105,000 on a car that's only worth $75,000 in the first year that they've owned it. Now let's read some comments. This first comment is from a guy, and he completely missed the point. He said, "I mean, the E39 is the best M5 ever made in many people's opinions. Probably worth $30,000 now if it was well taken care of." So that actually makes the point even stronger. A car that he paid $105,000 for plus interest, so now we're looking at closer to something like $120,000, is now worth only $30,000 just a few short years later. That is just sickening. Imagine if he just would have waited a couple years and bought the car for $30,000 in mint condition instead of $105,000 a couple of years ago. Some people have absolutely no impulse control. That was not a good financial decision, and everybody knows it. This user commented, "A vacation timeshare." Now, I'm not an expert on vacation timeshares by any means whatsoever, but I know they're super predatory, and I know a ton of people fall for them. They can't get out of them, and they have to hire a lawyer, and it's a huge mess, and they cost a ton of money. They never get what they're actually promised in the timeshare. The one thing and only thing I know about them is when I used to go on vacation with my family, we used to always go and sit down for the timeshare salesman's speech, try to sell us into a timeshare, and we'd always decline, and we'd get like a free dinner or something like that, and it was never worth it. This user replied to that timeshare comment, and he said, "I just went to a Disney, and a part of me tries to convince myself that the DVC, their version of a timeshare, would be worth it. The reasonable part of me would probably hate Disney after the 5th year and keeps scrolling." Yeah, it's not like Disney is a predatory company or anything, and I could imagine going there for 5 years straight would get extremely old. This user left a comment saying, "Not a single purchase, but not budgeting or significantly saving for a decade. Even putting away a couple hundred a month would have made a huge difference now." Now, this is something that I see all the time with personal finance. Even saving $100 a month, even saving $10 a month, if you can be greatly beneficial because nobody knows what their expenses are going to be down the road. And it's even better if you can invest that money and grow it exponentially with compounding interest. In my last video I made, I talked about something called the opportunity cost, where if you buy your money on something that you don't necessarily need, it's actually about 8 times more than you realize if you're in your 20s. For example, if you're 20 years old and you go to Starbucks every single day and you spend $10 on whatever it is that you get there, it's $10 today, but if you would have invested that money and pulled it out by the time you were 50 years old, you're actually losing out on a 9x return. So that $10 is now $90. So I usually try to think of my purchases like that. Well, I could have bought this $10 Starbucks, or I could have put this $10 into an investment account and made $90 by the time I was 50 years old. There's an opportunity cost when you're buying things that you don't necessarily need. This next post is, what's your dumbest financial mistake that still haunts you? This user commented, I emptied my savings to buy my now ex-fiance his dream car. Another thing with the cars. I mean, what is it with these cars that these people feel the need? Like, I can't wait to spend all of my money, live paycheck to paycheck, to drive a new car that's going to depreciate more than 30% in the first year as soon as I drive it off the lot. Like, that doesn't sound like something that I would ever want to do. It just stresses me out thinking about it for them. Those situations also get extra messy when you're in a relationship with someone and both people's name is on the title. So you technically both own the car, and now you're separated. Now you have to figure out who gets the car, who gets ownership of it. Do we sell it? Do we split it? It's just a terrible situation that I would never want to be in. And if you're watching this video, please try to avoid that situation. Even if you think you're going to be with the person for the rest of your life, it's best to just try and avoid that until at least you're married. So this next comment is actually a continuation of the last one that we just read. And this user actually asked the girl that emptied her bank account for her ex-fiance, I think we need to know what car it was. And she replied, and she literally said it was a Cadillac Escalade. Like, out of all the vehicles to empty your bank account for, you just bought a bougie Suburban. Total waste of money. Don't ever buy that unless you are so financially stable and you so have all the funds to do it. Don't ever finance a vehicle like that, especially since they depreciate so fast. This user wrote, letting my wife at the time manage the finances while I was deployed. She stopped paying all of the bills and wasted all of the money. It ended up with my home was foreclosed, cars repossessed, utilities were shut off, security clearance lost, and ended up leaving the service. 10 years later, and an ex-wife later, I've got my kids, house, car, and I'm doing much better, but life was pretty bad for a few years. Honestly, you need to audit the people you're marrying, and you need to be able to trust them with things, especially when you go out and leave. There should have been some red flags like, hey, she just spends all the money unless I literally resist or tell her not to. Like, I'm not even saying the woman was necessarily a bad person. It sounds like there was a lot of communication errors in this relationship. They just didn't talk to each other, and if they did, there would have been some signs that the woman didn't know how to manage the finances, and he should have made sure that she was good with doing all of that stuff before he went and deployed. And maybe he did, and maybe she's actually just a bad person. She spent all his money. I don't know. He doesn't elaborate on the story at all, but hey, it's a story that we can all learn from, albeit an extremely tough learning lesson for the guy from the Reddit post. Rest in peace, brother. This user replied saying, left a ton of my savings sitting in a low yield savings account for well over a decade instead of investing it. Will still retire early, but I'd be retired by now if I just dumped all of that into an index fund. For this one, I would have to assume this guy got some bad advice somewhere along the line, or he just wasn't educated about the stock market or retirement accounts like a 401k and how to invest his money. This is not investment advice, by the way, and I'm going to elaborate on that further by saying, be very careful who you take advice from. I have seen a lot of situations, especially similar to this guy, where they're taking advice from someone who is 70 years old, they have $8 million, and they have all of their cash tied up into a high-yield savings account. Like, yeah, they have their cash into a high yield savings account. They don't want it exposed to the stock market because even a small risk is too much because they don't need to make any more money. They're towards the end of their life. So they're obviously not going to put that money on risk. But if someone like that tells you to put it in a high yield savings account and you're 20 years old, it might not be a good idea to take advice from them, considering the fact that your situations are completely different. So anytime you take financial advice from someone, just remember everybody's situation is completely different. How much you make, how old you are, your risk tolerance, all of those things play a different role in how you invest your money. And it's so important that you factor everything in and do your own research before investing your money. Before we get to this last Redditor, I just want to take a moment and say, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe because it puts you in for a chance to win $150 for free. Because when we hit 1,000 subscribers on this channel, I'm going to select a random person completely randomly, and I'm going to give $150 to one lucky winner. So in order to get signed up, you must subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment down below, and you are automatically signed up for a chance to win $150. This user posted, "This is less dumb and more of a missed opportunity. A friend needed some cash one weekend and offered me some Bitcoin for $5 a pop. It all seemed like a scam to me, so I just loaned him the money he needed and told him to keep the Bitcoin, lol. $1,000 worth at $5 each. I don't even want to know what that's worth now. I take some comfort in the fact that he sold all of his and purchased a car long before they skyrocketed, so he's sitting in the same regret boat. It would be harder if he was ultra rich." Now, I actually have an extremely similar story to this. I'm not into cryptocurrency anymore, but when I was younger, I actually was. And I used my computers that I had laying around to actually mine cryptocurrency. And back then, you could actually make a little bit of money from it. So back then, I was mining Ethereum with my computers, because the catch was the apartment I was staying in at the time when I was 18 years old, I did not have to pay for electricity. I mined Ethereum 24 hours a day, every single day for 9 months, because that's how long I stayed in that apartment. Now, I held the cryptocurrency, this Ethereum, for the next 2 years until it went up in price, and I had just gotten done with school and everything like that, and I had debt that I needed to pay off, and honestly, this is the first time this coin like skyrocketed, and it was worth like $2,000, and I had probably like 200 Ethereum, so I went ahead and sold them. Just out of curiosity, I am going to look up the price and see how much that would have been worth today. So I just looked it up. I had 200 Ethereum, and I sold them for about $10 to $11 a piece, so I made a hefty $2,000 profit, which was just insane money for me back then when I was 18 years old and working at my first job out of high school. If I would have held that today, I would have $400,000. So yeah, and if I would have sold it, a year ago, it would be worth well over $500,000. So I don't really care. I don't tend to look at things in the past and have regrets about anything. Everything's a learning experience. And no, I am not trying to get rich. I only recommend mutual funds, safe bets in the stock market. Do not try and trade. Less than 1% of traders actually come out on top. So just don't even try it unless you just want to gamble money. Then go ahead, I guess. Well, that does it for this video, guys. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And like I said before, to try and grow the channel, I am giving away $150. So if you do subscribe, you will get put into that drawing to win $150 when we hit 1,000 subs. Thank you for watching.